Erica Ayala. And Erica, what more can we say about Caitlin Clark? 24, 10, and 10, her second career triple-double. What stood out to you about the way she got this triple-double in your eyes?
For me, what I liked from Clark and quite honestly, the Indiana Fever team is that even though they entered halftime with 11 turnovers, they were able to get that composure back, and they actually turned over Los Angeles, the Sparks, more turnovers than they had. So I love the composure that we're seeing. I love that this is a team that's still growing, and I think they're starting to figure out who their players are, who their go-to players are. Even when you have an Odyssey Sims that drops 20 points for a Sparks team that, has been struggling this season, Indiana found a way to win. They found their composure throughout this game, and I think that bodes well for them, knowing that they already punched their ticket to the playoffs.
It bodes well for them, right? Punching their ticket to the playoffs, but also handling the stress down in those clutch situations. And we got to talk about the three-headed monster of Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Caitlin Clark. They combined for 60 points in this game. What have you seen, or specifically in this game, what did you like about the way they executed to make sure everybody was clicking and getting their shots and also dishing out?
Well, for anyone that was listening to the broadcast, you heard that this backcourt has been the hottest thing in the WNBA since the Olympic break. And I do think that time together with this crew, that trio, as you mentioned, has been critical. We heard so many veterans, retired players, active players say that Caitlin Clark and likely the Indiana Fever were going to need time. It wasn't going to be instantaneous like your, instant coffee that you drink in the morning. No, we want this to be a nice Cuban coffee with a nice punch in there. And I think that's what we're seeing. It's not that this is not a talented team. You've got two back-to-back #1 picks. They just needed it to click. You've got the Rookie of the Month, Player of the Month in Caitlin Clark. You've got the Coach of the Month in Christy Sides, first ever in franchise history. Now, granted, I just want to point out that Stephanie White didn't have a chance to win Coach of the Month. The award just started in 2017, but things are starting to gel. This team needed time, and I do think that Indiana is one of the teams that benefited from the Olympic break, and you can see that in what they've been able to do on the court.
The Indiana Fever have 100% benefited from that Olympic break, and I'm going to continue to say it. I am very happy that Caitlin Clark did not go on that trip, just because what they're doing right now is far more important to their season. As far as the break goes, I think, getting in the gym, having those team activities that Chrissy Sides put together for the franchise and organization, to have those girls in a bonding situation, but also being competitive, being able to trust one another, being able to go to one another and tell them, hey, you need to pick it up offensively. You need to run the floor. You need to do this respectfully. And you know how it is when you're a teammate. You got to be able to check one another. You got to be able to hold one another accountable, right? So the Indiana Fever, they are literally over a 500 team now. They solidified themselves in the playoffs. They clinched the playoff. They've won more games than they won last year. They got Coach of the Month, Player of the Month, and Player of the Week, and Rookie of the Month. So this team right here, the way they are playing, yes, they have a lot of things they need to work on. Yes, they didn't protect the ball as much as they were blitzing today. The Sparks blitzed them a lot. Yes, they turned the ball over a lot. But they were able to dig through that, fight through all that, and still come up with the win huge in the fourth quarter. There were timely stops that they needed that they got. There are timely buckets that they needed that they got. There were just timely plays in general that will help win a championship. From Lexi Hall. Lexi Hall made a huge play at the end where she's getting rebounds and diving on the floor and just making hustle plays. You don't need flashiness all the time. Lexi Hall gets down and dirty and she makes the right plays time after time again. So with Clark leading the way, she didn't have the best start. We all know that. But what they're doing right now, you can't say anything about this team right now. This team is on fire. They're playing fast. They're playing for one another. They're playing defense. They're getting defensive stops when needed. Their coach, I'm not going to say Chrissy Sides is doing. She still has some things she has to work on too, but she's doing a great job with the girls. She's making the adjustments she needs to. As you can see today, there are a couple things that I think she could have changed, but all in all, they got the win. So they got a big game on Friday. I think they play the Aces, right? If I'm not mistaken. I think they got the Aces on Friday. If not, they got somebody else, and I think they got the Aces back to back or something next week. So let's finish off here what they got to say. But right now, she's spot on. You know, the break definitely were the Indiana Fever were definitely a team who benefited from the break, 100%.
Looks so much more refreshed, and so there's so much more chemistry between the team or with this team compared to the first half of the season. I shortchanged the trio of Boston, Mitchell, and Clark by 6 points. They had 66 combined points. But when you look at the schedule coming up, Erica, they have the Lynx, they have the Dream, and they also have the Aces. So what are you expecting out of this Fever team that looks really confident as we head in to the postseason? It's going to be here before we know it.
Well, you have to think about the momentum of the team first. They got their 5th consecutive win. That's the most that they've had this season, the most that they've had in quite some time. So they're kind of feeling it, Chris. They're feeling it. And they also are playing some teams that, although they're at the top of the standings ahead of Indiana, at least when you look at Las Vegas, you look at the Minnesota Lynx in particular, the Indiana Fever have had some success against the teams that they're going to play. Now, the team that they have an offer that they're still looking to get a win against is, of course, the Las Vegas Aces. They'll have 2. Now, that's going to be tough. But what I like about this is, again, the Indiana Fever have already punched their ticket. They're starting to get that chemistry together. And so now this is a time where they can really start experimenting, pushing certain buttons. We've seen that Christy Sides has put a lot more faith into Lexi Hull. You mentioned Alyssa Smith. I love what Kelsey Mitchell is doing. And I mentioned Player of the Month. Even Mitchell herself admitted that she kind of wanted that Player of the Month. I love that. And I think it honestly could have gone either way. And the fact that we're talking about Indiana, the Indiana Fever, could have potentially had one of 2 or the top 2 candidates for Player of the Month tells me that they're really in some really good rhythm right now, and they're going to need that. I mentioned it earlier. I like that they're finding ways to win late in the game. Odyssey Sims got a really good steal on Caitlin Clark. She regained her composure. We know that Caitlin Clark can get a little bit upset. And listen, it hasn't stopped Diana Taurasi from being great. It hasn't stopped Skylar Diggins-Smith from being great. So it's not that I'm calling it a demerit, but I like that she was able to gather herself. The team was able to keep their composure. And I think with the combination of how they're playing, that they're gelling, the ball is moving freely, and that they have these teams that, they know they want to prove something against these teams going into the playoffs. I like this stretch for the Indiana Fever. They can experiment. They can do that freely before they get to the postseason.
Right. One thing.
So look, we're going to stop here. I do want to say that I did do the pregame interview for the Indiana Fever, and Caitlin Clark did mention that she thought Kelsey Mitchell did deserve it as well, and she gave her all the recognition that was needed. Kelsey Mitchell has been playing amazing basketball, 100%. Now, as mentioned, the Indiana Fever are starting to find ways to win ball games in the 4th quarter under pressure. That is what's most important. That is what's most important for this team, because we have seen time and time again in the first half, when we get to the 3rd quarter, midway through the 3rd quarter, going into the 4th, we just start slipping away from this huge lead, 15-point lead, and the next thing you know, we lose the game. They start panicking. They're finding ways to get stops and buckets. And that's what's going to win the ball games. Now, as far as the Aces coming up, I think the Indiana Fever right now can play with the Aces. I think they're a much faster team, and I think they're going to be out in transition. I think they can shoot better than the Aces. So I'm going to take the Indiana Fever to beat the Aces next time they see them, and I think that's on Tuesday or Monday. It could even be Sunday, to be honest, but I got the Indiana Fever beating them. At least 1 out of the 2 games. So I don't know what you guys think. Me personally, I would like to think that the Indiana Fever have a better rounded basketball team. Obviously the Aces, that's a veteran team right there. That is a veteran team. You know, they have veteran basketball players. Now, I wouldn't say the Indiana Fever are a better basketball team. I would just say they play a better style of basketball, in my opinion. Aces, they got Tiffany Hayes, Plum, Asia, Gray, Jackie Young. You know that they got a lot of firepower over there. But I think the way the Indiana Fever play, I think they can outrun them and beat them in transition for sure. So I'm gonna leave this right here, man. It's your boy C. O'Connor. Welcome to Game Day Network. I got plenty of content to get to. The Indiana Fever had a big game, so I got plenty of content to get to. I appreciate you guys for tapping in. I will catch you on the next video. We're out.